Compass Mining is your trusted partner in Bitcoin mining. Whether you're investing in one machine or thousands, our customizable solutions are tailored to meet your needs. We are your experts in Bitcoin mining, offering a platform where individuals and businesses can purchase hardware, host machines, and access a range of ancillary Bitcoin mining services. We also specialize in large-scale site development and data center operations. Discover more at compassmining.io and see how we can power your success today. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, the official home of power mining analysis. Getting back to basics today, we're going to be talking miner news and analysis. Some big headlines in the press today with Bitfarms and Hive completing their 200 megawatt Paraguay facility acquisition or sale, and some financing news from Soluna Holdings. All of that and more in today's presentation. Before we get into it though, take a second, hit the like button, you guys. Big help to myself and the channel. Anthony loves it. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join and let us know in the comment section below if you're currently holding any of these three miners, your thoughts on the sector overall, and your forecast for Bitcoin price in the back half of 2025. With that being said, let's get into today's video. All right, Anthony, the St. Patrick's Day festivities are in the rearview mirror. Onwards and upwards here. Tuesday afternoon in the markets, Bitcoin price continuing to retreat. We talked about the big short position opened up over the weekend. Unfortunately, Bitcoin has turned downwards towards 81,500 currently. The miners following suit red across the board today.
Yeah, we've had this downside now, pretty much for the last 3 months, ever since Bitcoin reached its all-time high back on the 17th of December, 108,500 in terms of dollar price. But it's pulled back, and the questions we raised on yesterday's podcast: are we in a bear or a bull cycle? And it feels a bit like we're in a bull cycle, but we've had a bit of a pullback, and maybe between now and the end of the year, we'll start recovering some of those steps and get to where we should be. You go through some of the analysts out there like Van Eck or Cathy Wood, some of the big names out there, they're talking about 180, 200,000, 225, even at 250,000 Bitcoin by the end of 2025. So plenty of optimism out there. There's no significant news coming out against Bitcoin itself. There's a lot of obviously macroeconomic impacts that's affecting the stock markets. Also, we've got two wars going on around the world at the moment as well, so that's not helping. Every day we're pulling out more positive news stories, and we're sharing those, and we'll share some today as well. So yeah.
We most definitely will, and we've talked about the fact the market hates uncertainty, and with all the tariffs and geopolitical tension going on, as you alluded to there, Anthony, definitely a lot of uncertain times right now in the market. Now, we wanted to essentially get back to basics here. I mentioned that in the intro. Look at some of the underlying fundamental network data here that really supports what we discuss on the channel day in and day out. So we've brought along a couple of charts, images from Luxor here. The first one, fairly interesting. We've looked at this view before as it relates to hash price. Now, today I've selected US dollar price of Bitcoin. That's the gold line you can see there, overlaid with Bitcoin difficulty. So a couple observations here, Anthony, you and I were discussing. You can see most recently a divergence between the price of Bitcoin and global difficulty, which generally have gone up kind of in unison over the last 12 months. The other one you brought up is the fact that there's been a halving in this period as well.
Yeah, so back on April the 19th, we had a Bitcoin halving. So to the untrained eye, most people say actually the difficulty's been rising with the actual Bitcoin price. But back in April, there was a halving last year. So miners are only getting half the rewards now. And what you'd expect post a halving is the Bitcoin price would pick up significantly to cover that offset. So if the Bitcoin price rises effectively, by 100%, it will sort of like give the miners them same sort of revenues they were earning prior to the halving. Well, we've seen the Bitcoin price rise, but we've seen that difficulty rise even further. And what that means for miners, that's effectively like another halving to a certain extent. And we'll talk a bit more about that on the next slide.
Yeah, we most definitely will. This is one of the strongest arguments, I think. You talk about yesterday's podcast, Bull versus Bear, as to why we're in a bull cycle, in my opinion. Now, Ben Gagnon is one of the most well respected, longest tenured CEOs in the industry. He's been in the mining space, Anthony. You and I joke since he was in diapers. He came on the podcast and specifically said if you look through prior cycles, especially from the lens of hash price, you'll see around a 400% lift from trough to peak in each cycle. Now, Bitcoin price has gone up post halving, but as you say here, the miners aren't necessarily rewarded just on Bitcoin price. There's a lot of other variables like difficulty, like hash price. And if you're looking at hash price, Anthony, we've hardly seen any improvement here for the miners. Again, further supporting that we're still maybe early in this bull cycle.
Yeah, I mean, prior to the halving, the hash price was around about $110, and we've seen that drop, to below $40. Not that long after the halving, it did recover then up to sort of $60 when we saw the Bitcoin price rally to 108,000 in December. But it's again pulled back now, and I think yesterday, last time we looked, it was around about the $50 mark hash price, and that's not really enough for most of these miners. If you consider a miner has to buy machines, operate them, pay the energy costs, pay their operating costs to run the machines, pay the facility costs as well. There's not many miners able to break even at these current rates. And we'll see that in the next set of earnings figures because we're very close now to the end of the first quarter of 2025. We've just had literally all the miners. I think Bitfarms are due to release their numbers out very shortly. But the majority of miners that have come out, even for that last quarter of that included the all-time high in December. When you start including, depreciation, which most people say, well, it's a non-cash cost, and I say it's non-cash cost, it's still a real cost. They've still got to go and buy those machines. Not many miners were breaking even when you include the depreciation costs, and then also, some other non-cost like stock compensation, which is part of, for a lot of these mining CEOs, it's part of their salary package. So again, there's a very good argument to include that number in as well. From a non-cash perspective, yes, a few of the miners were making, reasonable margins, but this quarter now in 2025, this is going to sort out the ones that are really utilizing that cheap energy and efficient fleet versus those that aren't.
Yeah, some great commentary there, Anthony. Now, the next visual we wanted to look at, this is a new view on the channel. I don't believe we've pulled this one before, but a much easier way, in my opinion, to visualize the difficulty increases and decreases over the year. So increases you'll see in yellow, obviously the majority of the moves this year. Decreases you'll see in orange. I'll let you give some commentary there as well.
Yeah, and again, straight away, you look at these 26 periods of difficulty, 17 difficulty increasing, 9 difficulty going down. And if you look at the time frame from sort of September through to January, there's a 16-week period there where the difficulty increased every 2 weeks for 8 consecutive periods. And if you toss up the level of increase, that difficulty, it's around about 25% just for that 16-week period. Now, that 25% increase in difficulty means that's going to impact the production for each of the miners because that means the difficulty is increasing, therefore your production is less. And the reason the difficulty increases is more machines on the network. So there's more machines on the network. They're able to find or solve the numerical number very quickly, and therefore the difficulty has to be changed to get it back to its 10 minutes. Every block is supposed to be mined every 10 minutes. So when more machines go onto the network, it takes less than 10 minutes, and therefore the adjustment has to occur to bring it back to 10 minutes. And we saw that period there, literally 25%. Now, miners, they want the difficulty to go down so they can produce more Bitcoin. But we've had a halving back in April. This difficulty over the same period is like having a second halving. And the Bitcoin price hasn't rallied to compensate miners for this. So, again, it goes back to, that cheap energy, efficient fleet, or using some other techniques like, potentially hedging techniques out there. There's a lot of hedging products available on the market. And we know that some of the miners are already using that. We know that Bitfarms are using it in terms of some of their HODL we were using to hedge. there's a lot more different types of hedging techniques, and we'll probably cover that on a future podcast.
Yeah, it's a topic we probably should talk more about, this future hash price, future hash rate contracts, Anthony. Definitely presenting opportunities for the miners. The final view we've got from Luxor here is global hash rate, and very closely intertwined. As you're loading more ASICs or machines onto the network, the global hash rate's going to go up. Generally, that means more miners competing for that solution. And unfortunately for the miners, that means difficulty generally trends up as well. Compass Mining makes Bitcoin mining accessible to everyone. Start mining in as little as 48 hours with our turnkey hardware, online and mining directly to your Bitcoin wallet within 2 business days. Find out more at compassmining.io and get started now.
Yeah, and you can see over that year's period there, literally another, number of machines, probably, 33% more hash rate growing up over the last year. That's what's causing the problem. And yes, many of these North American miners that we cover on the channel are certainly growing their hash rate. I mean, look at the likes of IREN, CleanSpark, Marathon, Riot Platforms, Bitfarms of late. Hive will be doing it this year, growing significant amounts of hash rate. That's also impacting, but there'll be miners around the world who are able to access, maybe even cheaper energy in areas where, energy's stranded, maybe in Africa or other continents like that, where they can get access to cheap energy. We've noticed some of these areas grow significant hash rate in a short space of time. And that, that increase in hash rate, if you look at where we are today, the global hash rate is well over 800. I think it was 810 on a 7-day moving average when I checked earlier today. Go back to where we were a year ago, we're around about the 600 mark. So that's a big difference. Go back to January last year, we're at the 500 mark in terms of 500 exahashes global hash rate. Over 800 today, that's a significant increase. That's 60% increase in just over a year and 2 months.
Yeah, just incredible. And I remember we gave some predictions for year end where we think global hash rate would be, but the numbers continue just to scale up and to the right, Anthony. So great to get back to basics on some of these metrics. We see a lot of comments correlating Bitcoin price to miner performance, but you need to remember there's so many other factors here. And again, as we always say, Anthony, exactly why you can't take one metric in isolation with the Bitcoin mining sector. Another place we frequently update these metrics is in our newsletter. So we wanted to do a quick plug for that. A couple of reasons. One, it's a great way to get some information served right to your inbox. Secondly, it's also where we give updates on Miner Madness. We're starting the rollout of Miner Madness 3.0, so our Q2 competition this year. But would love to get some more signups there as well, Anthony.
Yeah, absolutely. All the data's in there. We put our articles in there. We put our podcasts in there, all in one place. It's going to be a regular newsletter every week. We started it every 2 weeks, but we've seen the numbers increase, and we're going to try to meet that demand now, putting it out on a weekly basis. But yeah, if you've not signed up to it, go into the pinned comment beneath the video here and join the newsletter and get that information all in one place at a given time.
There you go. And no guarantees, but I've still got a fairly full basement of Miner Madness swag, Anthony. So we may even be doing some giveaways for newsletter signups or via the newsletter. So stay tuned for that one. Now, speaking of news and the newsletter, we've got some great updates today. Bitfarms, once again, loving the new look on their website and the new logo. I had to redo all of our templates and thumbnails and everything today, Anthony, and really a big fan of this one. They came out with a press release, so did Hive, essentially talking about the Paraguay transaction, the 200 megawatt facility. As we heard from both Ben and Aiden from Hive, this really seems to be a mutually beneficial transaction for both parties and really helps both of them on their 2025 roadmap.
Yeah, I mean, this deal was an $85 million deal. Effectively, Bitfarms have sold a 200 megawatt site in Paraguay to Hive Digital. It's been a change of direction for Ben and the team. They're now fully focused on North America. They expect to have their energy portfolio 80% in the US and 20% international. So that'll be Canada. And they've still got some facilities in South America as well. So 20% international. And that's a significant milestone in their transition from an international Bitcoin miner to more of a North American energy compute infrastructure company. So great news from their perspective. But equally, great news from Hive's perspective.
You're sure right, Anthony. We talked yesterday about Hive's aggressive growth plans in 2025, a 400% increase on their hash rate, really propelling them into that top echelon of the big boy miners, so to speak. This Paraguay acquisition is a key or critical step in achieving that goal.
Yeah, I mean, this will take Hive's total to 300 megawatts within Paraguay itself. And bear in mind, at the moment, they're operating outside of Paraguay about 124 megawatts. So you can see that strategic expansion from their perspective marks, 317% increase in mining capacity. And that puts them at 25 exahash in certainly in that top tier of miners, and expected to be all online and energized by the end of September. So it's not got many months to go. 6 months from now, we should be getting updates at the end of March and at the end of June with their progress as miners will be switched on as facilities are completed. But end of September, we're expecting Hive to have 25 exahash in parallel to their HPC business, which at the moment is achieving around about 15 million of annualized revenue, soon to grow to 20 million of annualized revenue, with an expectation by the end of 2025 to get closer and closer to their target of 100 million of annualized revenue, putting them clearly into that top bracket as well for high performance computing.
Yeah, it certainly does. And again, you look at the market cap, the share price on this one, Anthony, definitely a head scratcher. The next piece of news comes from Soluna Holdings. Now, we've talked extensively with John over the past year and a half. You've brought up the fact, Anthony, that companies of this size, this market cap, it's difficult to raise funds, maybe don't have the same access to ATMs like we've seen with some of the larger players. John has expressed that they will find a way to get this done and finance these projects. Today, coming out and announcing they've secured $5 million worth of non-dilutive debt financing from Galaxy Digital, so another player in the Bitcoin sector.
Yeah, so effectively a loan from Galaxy, 5 million. It's over a 5-year term. It is secured with limited recourse to the parent company. And it will be, it can be paid back, far quicker. But this will just give them some sort of like cash flow as a lot of these big projects get rolled out. And then obviously when the revenues for these projects start coming in, we're talking about, they'll start getting paid for what they're doing, and they'll have a profit share on some of these projects. But they've got some big projects in the pipeline, and this is probably enough money just to cover them to get to that point. Bear in mind, I think everyone was expecting the Bitcoin price to be a bit higher, as we've already articulated in this podcast, at $81,000 as it is today. That's a bit lower than many of the companies are expecting, and certainly the likes of Soluna would have liked that Bitcoin price to be back at where it was at the all-time high of 108,000.
Yeah, they sure would, along with many of us in the sector. The one thing I will say about the depressed Bitcoin price, Anthony, it definitely does make a point for the importance of diversification into HPC AI. I remember last year around this time, a lot of discussion in the industry. We had CEOs saying AI could be a flash in the pan. People weren't sure if they wanted to divert their resources, their energy, their capital from Bitcoin mining. I recall many companies coming out with big exahash press releases this year, really seeing the HPC AI benefits as Bitcoin still waiting to take off.
Yeah, absolutely.
So with that being said, you guys, a great podcast today, some good updates in the industry. Share price, unfortunately, in the red, but giving you the opportunity to average down if you still have conviction on the sector. So let us know in the comment section below, you guys, how are you feeling about the Bitcoin miners? Make sure you hit the pinned comment there for the newsletter sign up. And with that being said, we'll see you back here tomorrow.